In the civil rights period, Black free thought would undergo some significant changes. So there are some distinctions between the 20s, 30s, and then what we see emerging in the 1960s and 1970s. So for one, open discussion of religious skepticism became less taboo during the 60s and 70s. Not that it was completely accepted, right? It's still not necessarily completely accepted today, but it became a little more sort of acceptable to express your skepticism. People were a little less wary of doing so. So earlier Black free thinkers, aside from a few, earlier Black free thinkers often waited decades to reveal their doubts about Christianity, right? Um, so Du Bois, for example, his autobiography, he didn't really go too in depth about his own religious views until his autobiography was published, actually posthumously, right? Langston Hughes or Neil Hurston, they both published their autobiographies in the 1940s, but they were sort of reflecting back on their path towards atheism and agnosticism in the 19 teens, right? So it wasn't as common to sort of express your free thought at the time prior to the civil rights movement. That's one thing that sort of starts to change, right? Also, in the 1960s and 70s, with increased access to education, the sheer numbers of Black free thinkers began to rise, right? So Black secularists could be found in nearly every major political group and cultural movement during the 60s and 70s, from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee to the Black Arts Movement to the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. So many of the most prominent Black political and cultural figures from the 60s and 70s were free thinkers, including Stokely Carmichael, James Forman, James Baldwin, Huey Newton, and Lorraine Hansberry. They often denounced Christianity in harsher terms than their predecessors had done, and they sort of continued to sort of chip away at the ties between religion, racism, and patriarchy in the United States. So their free thought and their political ideology certainly drew from that of their predecessors, but it took a new turn that would also inspire a new generation of free thinkers that would come after them, right? Folks like Norm Allen Jr., people that would help to sort of institutionalize the movement and create organizations like Black Nonbelievers dedicated specifically to advancing the cause of Black free thought. So now I want to just very briefly go into the origins of the long civil rights movement and then tie the sort of classical phase of the civil rights movement to secularism before moving into Black power and the Black arts movement.